Hi,
Hi, Mahavir. How are you?
no, I'm fine. How are you?
I'm
How's
good.
cold
I'm
over
good.
here? So you are in Jaipur or Delhi?
I'm in Jaipur.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, it's pretty cold here.
So, yeah, it is. It's also like 10 degrees Celsius, but there it is more actually, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it went down to, 6, 7 as well, 6, 7 degrees as
Okay,
well, but currently it's, I think, somewhere around 10 to 12 degrees.
mm.
Yeah.
So as you are aware that we are having this series, and in the last discussion we had Kavya Purnima where we started the theme of accessibility. So
Right.
today's topic is accessibility and tourism. So before I jump on that topic, I would firstly like to firstly the audience should know about you and your journey up till now. So
Right.
it can start from early childhood and how like it can start from how you got your disability per se. And so up to you. Over to you.
Right. Thank you so much for having me today. And hello everyone, my name is Kavya Makhija and I am an organizational psychologist by education. And currently I'm working as a job coach at an organization called Vishesh. And I'm also engaged with the NCPDP Javed Abidi Fellowship as a fellow, where I'm working on accessibility in public places and tourism in Jaipur. About myself, I live with a medical condition called arthrogryposis multiplex congenita, which in simple terms means that my muscles are weak, and some of the joints in my body have contractures, which basically means that their mobility is restricted. They are stiff, and
I
since
think
it is a congenital.
your network connection is not correct. So your voice is not coming clearly.
Okay, just give
If
me
it,
a moment. Really sorry for this. Just give me a moment.
yeah, now it is correct. Now it is coming clearly.
Yes, am I audible now?
Yeah, yeah. Audible and visible properly.
Oh, okay, wonderful. Great.
Mm.
Yeah, so I'll start with my introduction. So, hello everyone. My name is Kavya Mukhija, and I'm an organizational psychologist by education, and I work as a job coach at Vishesh currently. Uh, at present, I'm also engaged with NCPDP as an NCPDP Javed Avidi Fellow, where I'm working on accessibility in public places and in tourism in Jaipur itself. And about me and my disability, so I live with a medical condition called arthrogryposis multiplex congenita, which basically means that my muscles are weak and some of the joints in my body are contracted. They have contractures, which means that their mobility is restricted and they are a little stiff as well. And since it is a congenital condition, I have had it since birth. So I have been living with my disability since birth, and it is as old as me. And yeah,
So
that
yeah,
that is about me.
that's it. So tell us about your like family, your how was your relationship with your mother, your father, and sister? Tell us about your early days before we can jump on to the school days also.
Right. So we are a family of four: my mother, father, my younger sibling, my sister, and myself. And yeah, I mean, there has been a lot of support that I have received with respect to living my life as a person with a disability. Because, because I would say that, when there's a disability that you have to live with, the challenges become even more challenging. So,
Correct.
the regular situation becomes very much more challenging. You have to figure out new solutions for different things, even for everyday things. You have to come up with ways how can we do this to to decrease the discomfort or to uh, enhance the experience. So with regards to that, I think there has been a lot of support, positivity, and care, affection, um from my families and from my nuclear families, and I would say. So
Mm.
yeah, it's been going great and very, very supportive.
So at what age you went to school, if I may ask?
Right. So I went to school at the regular age.
Regular age.
So I started with my um, nursery, I think at the age of 3 or so, and went up to into the other classes subsequently. However, here I would like to
I would
also
like to
throw
know that
light.
key like were there any issues with the admission process or like accessibility
Yes,
issues
yes, yes,
per se? Yeah.
yes, right. I was just coming to that. So, so I was born in the late 1990s, and at that period of time, even though the first initial act, PWD Act, had been passed, um, the Right to Education Act was not yet a reality. And
Mm,
even with the PWD Act, the enforcement was negligible. Hence, when my parents were trying to get me admitted into school, there was a lot of repulsion from the school's end. Because even with the PWD Act in place, the schools, since it was a private school, they had the free will to disregard admission, to deny the admission of a student with a disability on the context that they were not aware as to how to cater to the needs of a disabled student. So, this happened at almost all the schools in New Delhi. But after a lot of, running from pillar to post, my parents were able to get me admitted into a school in Delhi itself. And yeah, that's how my schooling life kick-started.
mm,
But this was not the end of the challenges you know, uh, that were coming up in future times. So I remember that there used to be a, a helper with me in school, a private
mm,
helper, because the school again said that the school staff would not assist me with anything,
mm,
right? So the school completely denied all kinds of support. So we had to hire a private helper who would help me with moving from different class to another one, you know,
mm,
uh, like going to the playground or mean, any activity which involved movement, right? She would be there
Required.
to
Correct.
support me with that, right?
Mm,
So this was there, but I would also say that while there were a lot of challenges and a lot of setbacks that came um, with school, there were a lot of people who were ready to, offer support and who would go an extra mile to, make the experience worth it all. So I remember
mm,
I used to commute via a private van,
mm,
and the driver of the van used to make sure that I reach the classroom. So he used to carry me in his lap and make
mm,
me sit in my seat comfortably. And then during the dispersal again, he used to pick me from the class itself
mm,
and make me sit in the van and then take me home with all the other students.
mm,
And so I needed the passenger seat to sit because the seat at the back, the back seats were not very accessible
mm,
for me.
mm,
Although I did not use a wheelchair at that time, but still, since my
mm,
body joints were not very mobile, I
mm,
could not sit at the back. So he made sure that the passenger seat was vacant for me, and he explained it to all the other students why it was necessary. So I think these little things also make a great impact,
yeah.
this awareness, sensitization, it also adds on to the entire experience.
So apart from that, how was your public life in your school? Like, were you part of like various competitions or like events as such,
Right. So
and
I would
also
say that,
academically?
right, of course. So first coming to academics. So, as a student with a disability, I'm not generalizing here, but most students with disabilities experience some kind of bullying, right? Be
Mm,
it name calling, be it some discriminatory behavior from the teacher
correct.
or the
Mm,
peers. So, at some point or the other, they experience that. And this
mm,
was the same with me as well. And I would get really very upset with all these experiences. So,
mm,
my parents made sure that they tell me that. So I remember my mother telling me that if I had to answer them back, if I had to answer my bullies back, the only way I could do was by excelling in studies. I
mm,
mean, using academics as a weapon, literally. So this was it, and yeah. So I mean, initially I was not very great at academics
mm,
because I mean, yeah, as a young student, it was, I mean, me and academics did not go well. But as I progressed and as the classes became higher and higher, I learned that, I understood the meaning of my mother's words.
mm,
Why uh, academics was very important for me. So that was when I put in a lot of efforts and into studies, into grasping the concepts and making sure that I score well because in as per the Indian education system, unless and until you score well, you're not a bright student.
mm,
So and soon I was able to get a spot in the topmost achievers of not only the class but also in school.
mm,
So I remember uh, during my 12th board exams, um, I had my psychology exam and I topped the exam in my school. So it was a CBSE board exam and I topped from my school. I scored
mm.
100% marks in that. So I think
Oh my God.
I realized this over time.
Mm,
And coming to extracurriculars, so I was there in almost every competition, fancy dress. show and tell, um,
Mm.
talent show, whatever happened, I was a part of that. Even though I did not win, but yes, I
Yeah,
participated in
continue.
almost all of all of that, be it the annual day
Mm.
celebration or anything. So I was a part of that, and later that also transformed into me learning music, and I even trained for dance once with Shamak
Okay.
Davar.
Okay,
So
I see. The
yeah,
wheelchair dance you must have like he
yes,
has
yes, I
a
was the
special group
only.
for that, I guess.
No, but I
Uh,
was not aware of that earlier.
at
So
that time
this
it might not be, but now they are having a special
exactly,
batch for that.
yeah. So right, I participated when I was in the sixth grade,
Hmm.
and I was the only disabled student in the group. And
Hmm.
I mean, it was so nice to see that um they modified the entire uh, dance whatever dance style or whatever to accommodate me into this thing.
Hmm.
So it was really nice and very welcoming
Yeah.
and inclusive, of course.
Yeah. So like we should like move forward now.
Yeah,
So how about college? Like you chose psychology as a subject, right? For your like
yeah.
bachelor's. So how was that? Obviously, you scored well in psychology, and so I am more interested in how you developed this interest in psychology over time.
Right. It is a very interesting story um, as well. So in my 11th, no, in my 10th grade, so we had to make a choice between um, multimedia and web designing and psychology for our subjects in 11th and
Mm,
12th. And I had chosen humanities, so I had these two options of choosing between multimedia and psychology. And given the creative bent of mind that I have, I was more inclined towards taking multimedia and web designing because, it involved art and creativity and so many
correct.
other interesting things. But inaccessibility came in the way again. So the
Oh.
computer lab was on the third floor,
Mm-hmm.
and there was no lift, there was no ramp. And of
Mm,
course, for multimedia, computer is a necessity because it is a highly practical subject.
mm,
So, and my class teacher was very clear that this would not be possible because there's no way that I could go to the computer lab, and
mm,
hence the only option that I was left with was taking up psychology. So that is how, I mean, it became a blessing in disguise, I would say, choosing psychology. And then I spent the subsequent days to look up what psychology is, what the subject is all about, because I had no idea. I had just heard the word for the very first time.
mm,
And then I started reading what psychology is, how it is used, and what does it include, and sort of developed an interest towards that because I had never read that. So it was very fascinating to even know about such a subject that existed. And when I started finally studying it, I felt that this subject was truly made for me because
mm.
math, science, social science were all very I mean, they were not my subjects. They were not very suitable for me. So I
And
really
also,
liked the subject.
when we like think of psychology, we immediately relate to psychological thrillers, and that is our first introduction, right? Ki how like like that kind of movies. So
Right,
for me,
right.
that I can relate with that, but understanding theoretically and developing interest, you have to study and you have to like. Um, so
True,
yeah,
true.
after you went to like college, so how was your journey in that? DU it
So
was,
college
right?
was, yeah, sorry.
It was DU, right?
So I did my bachelor's from Jaipur
Oh,
itself. They were from
Okay,
the
fine.
IIS University here in Jaipur.
Okay, okay.
And I would say that my college life brought with it a sort of independence and it autonomy because there was more accessibility. The college campus was more accessible, although it was not 100% accessible, but
Mm,
it was fairly more accessible than the school.
mm,
Plus, there was more autonomy as to, what classes you have to attend, uh, what classes you don't have to attend, where do you want to go, with whom do you want to be. So I think there was a lot of um, independence and a lot of agency as to what I wanted to do rather than what I had to do. So, so this was the major experience. Plus, a lot of these things with friendships as well. Who I wanted to be friends with because now I had the means to actually, um, be friends with whoever I wanted to. In school, uh, I even couldn't sit at a different place
correct.
because it was not accessible. So I
Mm,
sat on the first seat, um, in the first in this first seat all throughout my school life.
yeah,
But here,
it must be boring, right?
yeah,
Sitting at one
it was
place and
boring.
because generally the toppers enjoy that, but from a human perspective, if you are stuck in one place and you don't have any option, then it's like you're just you can't do anything about it.
True, exactly. Plus, there was this thing that, like it happens with teenagers that, they are more inclined towards sitting at the back. And,
Hmm.
so all my friends would
Ah,
go and sit at the back, and I would be like
yeah.
alone in the front. So
Hmm.
that also became very uh, upsetting at times. But yeah, so
So
college was a
more
whole new different
happening,
experience for me. Yeah.
and so then you got into this Rising Flame Fellowship. How was that?
So Rising Flame Fellowship, I think it was a whole new different experience for me.
Okay.
I mean, if you were to compare the pre-Rising Flame Kavya and the post-Rising Flame Kavya, you would really see huge differences in her. And the first and foremost one being in confidence. So,
Okay.
I mean, even the confidence to articulate your thoughts and to speak in front of people. I think, be it because of a person with a disability or due to other factors, these were very difficult for me. But
Yeah.
with the engagements we had during the Rising Flame Fellowship, I think it just added on to a lot of grooming and a lot of personality development, which
So
was
what
extremely
was the
important.
like purpose of that fellowship basically?
So the fellowship was for women with disabilities, and
Hmm.
they highlighted various areas, like communication, gender, sexuality, then media, all these issues they highlighted. And we used to have um, sessions, every month we used to have an online engagement, 2.5, 3 hour long engagement where we used to talk about these things, like gender. So what is the understanding of gender? How do we see gender?
Hmm.
Then social concepts also, like caste, what even disability, like what is our understanding of disability? How do we
Hmm.
see disability? you know these things. Then we would also be given assignments, not like very theoretical ones, but just to uncover our own experiences with certain things.
Okay.
So that was
So
there. And the
it was like
fellowship.
post bachelor's or like with the bachelor's you were doing this.
So I did this after my bachelor's. After my
Okay.
bachelor's, I took a 1 year break
Break.
to actually figure out
What to
what area
do?
of psychology I wanted to master
Hmm.
in. So I took a
Hmm.
break, and during this break, I also did the Rising Flame Fellowship.
Nice. So you got the opportunity to like also understand disability advocacy in this period, ki how to do
Yes,
it
yes,
professionally, and also you got the chance to go to abroad, right?
yes, yes.
In that meantime, so where you went, like what was your first like outing as a speaker? I'm working to know that.
Right. So the first time I got an opportunity to represent India was at uh, the UNHCRC, which is
Okay.
in Geneva. So, United Nations Convention on Rights of the Child. This was the convention that happened in 2013, and there I was a representative of India as a child delegate. So I was in my 10th grade at that period of time, and I represented India. There I shared my experiences of living with a disability and also those of other children like me, other disabled children back home. And I would say that it was since it was my first experience of being in a foreign country, and it was Switzerland. So the
Hmm.
accessibility there was amazing. I mean, you know, the entire time, so I was accompanied by my mother, and the entire time we just used public transport to move around the city. It was so
Hmm.
accessible. Even with a wheelchair, everything was so accessible. The people were so nice. The driver used to stop the bus. He would deboard it, assist us with moving inside the bus, open up the ramp, and then inside the bus he would make sure that all the wheelchair is tightly packed, and then
Hmm.
again when we had to deboard he would then come again and help us with that. So I think it was an accessible country, it was beautiful, and the experience was very much inclusive.
And in a sense, that gave you a sense that what's wrong in India, why it's not happening, and why. So it must have also give you some reflection how things can improve in India back then.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, yes, yes.
And also, okay, moving on. Uh, so this NCPDB fellowship you got, like in the, I think it was you were in master, you started the masters and you got this
Yes,
fellowship,
yes,
or before
I
that?
was
Yeah,
in my master's.
yeah. So how you got to know about this fellowship, NCPTV fellowship, and like
So
how
I
you?
I got to know about it through online itself.
Hmm,
So I was, I think in Twitter or Instagram, um, they had shared about the fellowship, and yeah, I got to know about it through there only.
hmm. So tell me about, like, now we can like focus on the topic. So your topic is accessibility and tourism. So how you came to choose this topic? Because as we are discussing, we didn't your background do not actually directly suggest of that. So
Yeah,
how you developed interest in that in this?
right. So, the choosing this topic was basically, I mean, it was supported by my personal experiences as a wheelchair user. So, ever since I have used a wheelchair, there have been difficulty in accessing stairs or steps that are there, and these posed very big different, very big hurdles, I would say. And
Mm,
once when we moved to Jaipur 7 years ago, there was a restaurant that was being built in my neighborhood, and there we went and we asked the head that was there that you should include a, a ramp or a lift here so that
mm,
it becomes inclusive and accessible for everyone, not just
mm,
for the non-disabled people. And you would be surprised to know what we got in return.
mm,
So he asked that, this is not a hospital that people with disabilities would come here.
Hmm.
So this was the understanding that, people with disabilities are only supposed to be in hospitals.
Yeah.
And this was also the reason why I decided to take up accessibility. Firstly, because of my own personal experiences.
Hmm.
Secondly, Jaipur is not very much developed in terms of accessibility. Like there's
Yeah.
a lot that can be done.
And there's a
So
lot of tourist
these
area places there over there, and there are many
exactly and
palaces, and there are many, glorious places. But I don't think they are fully accessible.
exactly. And since there are a lot of tourists, millions and millions of tourists visit Jaipur every year. So I mean, if we are welcoming international travelers, we
Low internet connection. Yeah,
I think you lost me in between.
yeah. Yeah, your connection is still not
Yes,
stable. Like, yeah, now it's fine.
right. Okay, okay. Where did you hear me last?
Yeah, so we were talking about like the accessible uh, mm, places
Okay, right.
uh,
So,
in Jaipur.
yeah, so, since Jaipur welcomes so
Mm,
many travelers every year, like millions and millions of travelers and tourists every year, so, we should be able to give them international facilities as well, international level facilities as well, be
correct,
it in terms of the experience or the accessibility.
correct.
Yeah.
So, like, what was your finding, or like, what's your like, what was your finding primarily up till now, I would say.
Yeah, so right. So during the fellowship, as you may have been aware, that we all did a baseline research,
Hmm.
and my research was based on understanding two major aspects. So
Yeah.
firstly, accessibility from the perspective of persons with disabilities, where my target population one was persons with disabilities,
Hmm.
and secondly, accessibility from the point of view of business owners.
Business
So
owners.
right,
So you are
so
talking about the
you know,
hotels and matlab ki all the public from that
so
perspective, no?
any public establishment, right, which is owned by any
Private
person in Jaipur.
individuals.
Yes.
Hmm. Okay.
So what is the accessibility there, and how do they assist people with disabilities?
Hmm.
So my research had responses from around 88 people with disabilities
Hmm.
on their experiences, and you know and you would be surprised to know that almost 11% of the respondents said that they never traveled, they
Hmm.
never left their home, and they never went out, and the
Hmm.
main reason was accessibility, because the places were not accessible. and,
So in the
and
respondent,
yeah,
if I may ask, in the respondent, were 11 of them were there, no? Okay, they never left. On in that
11% of
person
80
percent, okay,
80
okay.
yeah, yeah.
That would roughly come around what number, if I
It
may,
would be, I think, roughly around 8 to 10 people.
8 to 10 people.
Maybe, yeah.
And what was the division between the locomotor and other kind of disabilities?
So, locomotor people with locomotor disabilities were the most
Hmm.
in the participant list.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people with invisible disabilities were the least.
Hmm. Yeah. So what? Yeah. Go on. Yeah.
Yeah, so I also this was the finding. Then the research with business owners, although I could not reach a lot of business owners, I could only reach 11 of them. But they also, but out of them, I think two or three were accessible to people with disabilities.
Hmm.
A few, like four to five of them, had never heard about the RPWD Act or the Accessible India campaign.
Hmm.
And this also highlights that, although the government is making a lot of efforts to raise awareness and to make public places accessible,
Hmm.
but this is not somewhat reaching out to the grassroots. You know,
Hmm. Yeah.
uh, Common people are not aware about these. Then, apart from this, I also did observational visits to uh, public places in Jaipur. For example, the Jaipur Chowpatty. So, the Jaipur Chowpatty is a promenade style public eatery
Hmm.
which has stalls of major um, eateries in Jaipur. So, it's
Hmm.
all under one roof.
Okay.
So I paid a visit there, and so I mean they had thought about access somewhat, like there was a ramp to access the stairs and everything, but the seating area was not very accessible.
Hmm.
So, there were
Hmm.
stone slabs and fixed tables that were there, and there was no space for wheelchair users or people with mobility impairments to, sit and to eat with other
Hmm.
people. Then some other accessibility features that I felt were necessary were like tactile pathways
Hmm.
for people with visual impairment, and
Hmm.
something that I found that could be done at Jaipur Chowpatty was that, so outside each stall they had a huge stone slab,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
To for people to take orders, to place orders, and so on.
Correct.
So I felt that um, they could write the menu in braille on that stone slab, so that
Hmm.
people with visual impairments could feel and touch and know what was there, because the menu was all verbal and it was not accessible for people with visual impairments. And so based on this I prepared the report.
And since
uh,
it was verbal, most of the things like people with like hearing impairment also may have issues. And I'm not sure about that.
exactly
Yeah.
exactly true.
Yeah. So what you did like next?
So I did the research and I prepared the report. Based on the report, I also prepared a policy brief with all the guidelines from the Jaipur Building Bylaws, from the harmonized guidelines which are there for accessibility in public places, and from the RPWD Act,
Hmm.
collated them into the policy brief, and now I'm to present that to the Disability Commissioner in Jaipur. So I'm on to that now.
Okay. So in terms of like when you were like doing all this kind of research, so like
Hmm.
how was your experience like going into those places? Because some of the this is my opinion that key person with disabilities, their perspectives remain largely confined to urban places because urban places in what sense that key places which are accessible, which are posh, which are thoda high end, because the moment you go to the suburbs or if you go to these places like eateries and all, it is not accessible at all. So being there as a person with locomotor disability and also being a researcher, so how was your experience like that? It was like it might be like challenging also, like people staring at you and ये क्या कर दिया and all.
Yeah, I mean that is there not only this time, it is a given at any place I visit, people are
Hmm.
staring, Some may even ask intrusive questions, or some may offer unsolicited advice. So these come with any place that I visit. But
mm,
here, firstly, I would like to say that I felt somewhat seen because I saw a ramp there. And
mm,
um, another thing was that what I feel is lacking with architects or people who are basically into building public places is
mm,
that they may not, I mean, they are aware like what needs to be built,
mm,
but somewhere the knowledge is not very concrete. For example, the ramps that are, at some places, the ramps that are there. So they
mm,
have some tactile, uh, some tiles which are protruding at the surface. So it's
mm.
like a ridge-like thing. So when you roll a wheelchair, it is very jerky and it becomes very uncomfortable because of those tiles which are coming out of the surface.
Yeah,
So, and so when I asked them that why is this there, did you use it yourself? Did you bring a wheelchair
mm,
or any sort of a trolley, or and did you experience it yourself? They're like, no, we did not. And I think that is where this thing, there's a gap between building something and ensuring that whether it is user friendly or not.
correct. And in terms of like going into like places, if I monumental places.
Yeah.
So how was your experience in those? Have you done any like study on those places? Like,
Yes, yes, I have. So I have been to the Nahargarh Fort, which is there in Jaipur,
yeah,
and the city palace. Um, I would like to talk about the city palace. So, I mean, the city palace, so the entire area is not um, open to public. So whatever was open to public, they had the ramp, uh, they had ramps installed at places wherever a step, um, there was a step or some stairs. But uh, I also feel that in such places of historical importance, it becomes very very challenging to retrofit these places and
yeah,
to ensure that their beauty and the aesthetics
and
are not
sanctity.
compromised,
Yeah, it is a huge
right?
debate. Like how much you can tweak and how much you can, and
Exactly,
because
exactly,
sometimes the foundations of it, if you make it too much of it changes, the foundation itself get, so they are not very ready to make it accessible.
exactly.
So I remember related to this thing, I remember that key in 1998, I guess, Stephen Hawking, he
Yeah,
was visiting
he
India,
came to
and
India.
like he visited few places like Taj Mahal, Qutub Minar, and for that purpose only it was made accessible for the first time in India, and it was
True,
a huge. And
true.
after that, I remember that Javed Abidi filed the case, and actually he, this is how he started his making education accessible places and all. So yeah,
Right.
so still the accessibility thing is still very anecdotal in India, I guess. Some high influential people come and then they try to make changes few places here and there, and then there's no sustained policy which can see through it. Like Accessible India campaign also, you must have
Right.
also like have received many RTI done RTIs
Yeah.
also. So what you found out? Like what was your reply? Like in
So,
RTIs?
the RTIs that I had filed, I mean, I would say that I did not receive very detailed information. It was just for the sake of answering that, I would say, like, I was keen on knowing what places have been made accessible, how much
Specifically.
budget has been. Exactly. So I
Hmm.
specifically highlighted that, say, for instance, if we talk about the Jaipur railway station, Jaipur Junction, then what accessibility features have been installed there? You know,
Hmm.
if ramps are there, how many ramps have been installed? If tactile pathways are there, where have they been installed? So I tried to make them very, very specific and to the point that they could just give me numbers that, 5 ramps have been installed or so on, whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, I did not receive the kind of response I was looking forward to. And they just said that, the information is there with the State Department and they do not have access to it. So this is all that I received.
Yeah. It's more of a like comply. Yeah. Correct. As Anjali says, ki it is about compliance and implementation. Exactly. Policies are there, harmonized guidelines are there, building codes are there, but there is no implementation because at the architecture level and at the implementation level, those engineers, junior engineers, they are not aware of this kind of, guidelines. And they are the ones who are actually making the building. I remember, again, I'm taking example of like this. In For making one like toilet accessible, I had to actually, make him make the civil engineer like what is harmonized guidelines and everything, and guidelines are one thing. First of all, I still feel that harmonized guideline is still very exhaustive, and for a lay person, or even if you are not coming from architecture background, because as a person with disability, I may not come from that background, but still I need to access that document. I feel that
Right.
it needs to be like simplified so that a person with disability, regardless of their background, can understand that, and then make a informed complaint कि हाँ यहाँ पे ये चीज होना चाहिए, एंड इफ दे नो दैट कि हाँ सिविल इंजीनियर से बात करने से भी हो जाएगा,
Hmm.
तो वो कन्वर्सेशन होना बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है. अदरवाइज व्हाट
Exactly.
हैपेंस कि everything goes into the policy domain कि आई पॉलिसी नहीं, policies are there but implementation and the follow up, I would say that कि भाई, like for example, if we are making reports, how many times our reports are considered seriously कि भाई हाँ एक रिपोर्ट होना चाहिए, and if you search how many access audits are there actually public, hardly you find any properly done access audit publicly.
Yeah.
Even the architects who are doing those kind of audits, they will not give it readily. They will say that ki, I have charged this much money, so we can't give you like readily. If you want to do it, you do it by yourself. So I feel that this
True.
kind of knowledge should not be, you know that barrier should also, not, it should be simplified and it should be made publicly available so that at least people know that कि हाँ accessibility का जब बात करें तो क्या है. So if we are talking about like what should be the diameter of the uh, door, and how the door should be there. So I understand that not every nuances may be understood by everyone, but broadly, they should have that understanding, and they should know where to reach out.
True, true. And also, I feel that, firstly, so there are two things. Firstly, there are a lot of people who are involved from the start to the end of the process. And it also, so for example, a building is being constructed. You know how, so when the registry is done, when the uh, go ahead is received from the authorities, from the government authority, how important do they feel it is to, actually consider the accessibility of the place? When the license is given to any public place, and firstly, licenses. should not be given if the place is not accessible.
mm,
Secondly, accessibility is still largely considered to be a person with disability thing. That only people with disabilities require accessibility. But if you look at the larger perspective, I mean,
mm,
I tell this to so many people that just go and stand in front of a ramp and stand in front of a ramp which has stairs next to it,
mm.
and count how many people use the ramp versus those who use the stairs. And
Correct.
if the ramp is correctly made with the right gradient and with the right material,
Yeah.
I can guarantee that the number of ramp users would be more than those who are using stairs.
100% agree because uh, I have seen that key many places in library, in public library in Mumbai. I have seen this key. There was a ramp, and because it is well made, so person with any person uses that ramp because it is accessible. It's just as saying that key once footpath was made for a certain kind of audience, like public, like it was for the older old generation and then all for like person with disability. But over time, footpath was used by everyone. So
Exactly.
we have to also understand that every um, and that message has to go to the public and for the policymakers because once because public awareness is one thing, but at least if we have a policy and if we have कि policy makers और mid जो हमारे middlemen होते हैं like जो implement करते हैं actual में they should be made aware कि भाई अगर civil engineers अगर नहीं aware हैं they should have that because what happens कि once you go to these officers they are so full of themselves once you tell them कि यार यहाँ पे issue है तो वह कि मैं we are doing this for many years why you are making and to make that impact it has to be have lot it has to involve lot of advocacy and it has to do be done in a very documented way then
Yeah,
only
true.
these gaps and barriers can be and it is a big task I would say so yeah so we are in the last phase of our talk and lastly I would like to like ask you like 10 years down the line where do you see um, this disability movement in India especially going and what is the current challenges and how we can overcome generally in a disability sector.
So I think firstly having a unanimous voice and a unanimous uh, you know need for awareness is very important, because even within the disability sector there are um, there are different sects of people. There's no single voice that if I were to say what is the demand of the disability sector,
Mm,
I would hear very many different voices, but no single voice that tells me, okay, this, as people with disability in
yeah,
India, we want this A, B, C, D. So this unanimity is something that I feel is a great challenge as of now, because unless and until we stand united and we have a
cross
single
disability
direction.
understanding
Exactly. Cross disability
yeah
understanding is very, very important.
very important.
And secondly, I think 10 years down the line, I feel there would be way more awareness than there is at present. Maybe, so I think intersectionality would also become a very important part, as it has
Mm,
already started now, that, um, intersectionality of disability and mental health, then disability and gender, disability and LGBTQ plus rights. So I think this would start, and as these areas, the intersections like LGBTQ, mental health, these progress and they become uh, uh,
mainstream.
more aware, more mainstream, then this would also impact the disability sector, and that would also help the sector to become, include more people and to become not only just centered to PWDs but to the larger people, but to,
Yeah,
people in general.
yeah. We also understand. We have to also understand that as a disabled, population, we should also look for allies who can,
Exactly.
and there are obviously there are common causes, but sometimes we miss on those larger alliances because we are so crippled or fixated with our problems internally.
Right.
So as of now, we have this challenge that we need more unity and more, so in a way that everything what we say in terms of experience, it has to be documented well and it has to have some scientific and research based orientation rather than individual speaking. It should
True.
be have it should have a collective voice.
True.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah,
Right.
it was like great talking to you and. We'll catch up again. And as you know, I have plans that will have a joint session like with other organizations also. So this is just a part of building that path.
Right.
Let's hope and how it goes. And in fact, I am also trying to bring in more people, and I should go beyond more guests, and I should go beyond this fellowship also. Like I think people from Kerala or people from other states, they should also bring in more these kind of platforms is needed because like Namaste Disability, your platform, my platform, Project Samaj, or like we have many platforms, but as of now we need to have that kind of we need to hear every voice and we need to have that understanding the disability sector is not like no more like that the public can take for granted and
Yeah.
it should be more visible and yeah, the social media has also enabled us to do that
Exactly.
efficiently
In a
and
great way.
because I remember that if you go by the conventional way like going into the newspaper or like mainstream media, I hardly see any bites from the disability issues and it's like very hard to get in, but
Yeah.
social media has democratized this space as they have democratized other spaces also.
True.
So it's good and let's hope for the best. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
bye. Bye.
Great. Have a great evening,
Yeah.
Mavi. Thank you for this.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank
for having me
you.
today.
And thanks for all the, um, those who have, patiently heard us. And those who have not,
Yeah, definitely.
they can, find our recordings after this also. So, yeah, okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye bye. Take care.
Bye bye.